Thank you, Presiding Officer. Members may recall that just before recess, the Subordinate Legislation Committee, of which I am the Deputy Convener, was translated to a higher purpose and is now the Delegated Powers and Law Reform Committee. So therefore, I am particularly pleased to see that among the bills that the Government is bringing forward is a bill that has come from the Scottish Law Commission's report on formation of contract execution in counterpart, because that appears to be precisely the sort of bill which it is thought might now come to the Delegated Powers and Law Reform Committee. Now, this is a little modest bill, one might imagine, but it actually steps right back into some of the history of Scotland, and I will come to that later in my jamming session about this exciting piece of legislation. What the bill essentially is about is providing to businesses three things: security, privacy and certainty when they are conducting contract completion by other than the traditional means of bits of paper and everybody having to get to the same place. Essentially, it creates a legal framework whereby we can send, with security, privacy and certainty, documents across the ether and complete contracts. Now, that saves effort, that will speed things up in business, and that, I'm sure, will very much be welcomed. It's part of course, a wider agenda to use the electronic world to speed up processes in business and in government. Much more of our life is now online, and businesses want the legal certainty to be able to use the online world to a greater extent. Now, to make this work, it relies on a piece of software called RSA, developed by three eminent gentlemen, Rivest, Shamir and Edelman. The fact that we call it that, and it comes from these three gentlemen, a Hindu, a Muslim and a Jew, incidentally working together, which is quite interesting, is entirely due to the UK government, because the UK government had a brilliant scientist called Clifford Cox, who, working for GCHQ, actually developed this technology in 1973. But the UK government decided that this was something that was so powerful and so secret, it was actually bound by the Official Secrets Act until 1997. As a result of which, the United States, who had no such material inhibitions on this, have grasped this commercial opportunity. They own the rights to the encryption software that protects our financial and other transactions on the internet. They didn't do as much of a good turn by doing that. Obama described his country in the last week as the world's oldest constitutional democracy. We've seen some abuses of power in this area by the National Security Agency in the United States, but at least there's constitutional remedies. What I would like to see, of course, is in an independent Scotland that through our constitution we are able to provide in law things for the citizen and for businesses that guarantee protection of data. Now, of course, there are reservations in the Scotland Act that prevent us from doing that at the moment. In particular, in Schedule 5 at B8, the interception of communications is a reserved matter. So there's a limit to what we can do. But we have the intellectual horsepower in Scotland to build on this particular bill, which creates a framework for one small part of the electronic communication world and gives us an opportunity to move into other areas. We can genuinely be a world leader if we can look further at what we're doing in this bill, but also if we can get the powers that there are reserved currently to Westminster. Now, this is new, but it's not new. Mary, Queen of Scots, used exactly the same technology as we now use with RSA to communicate with her lovers. She didn't use a mathematical origin, but she used a special box which had two locks on it. And the trick in protecting communications is not to share your key with anyone. The lock, she had the key to one lock, her lover had the key to the other lock. There were no duplicates. The box, the message was put in it, she locked her lock. It was sent to her lover, he locked his lock. It was sent back to her, she unlocked her lock. It was sent back to him, he unlocked his lock. So in an insecure world, this box could travel around, nobody could open it. That's the technology that this bill is going to put at the heart of a particular piece of our legislation. Well done, Mary, Queen of Scots. First Minister coming from Lithgow, where she was born, of course, will be particularly pleased. But, Presiding Officer, I no longer have time. Do forgive me. But
the member is concluding.
Yes. But it perfectly illustrates, I think, a fundamental point about where we are. Many of the things we have to do, I can only speak of them in the following terms. We're limiting ourselves, when we use devolved powers, to using a teaspoon to bail out the consequences of the substantial problems that we face, the financial tsunami, the cuts from Westminster. Let's get to using the bulldozer of full powers so we can do so much more. Presiding Officer.